Steven, is this a mini Z6 III? Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a preview of the new Nikon Z50 II. Like, not the B52s, but the Z50 Space 2. Now, it's been 5 years since Nikon released the original Z50, which we do have a video on, and I really did like that camera 5 years ago because it was compact, it was fast, it was a mirrorless camera, and it was really good for the value that it offered. Now, we are using a pre-production model currently. We're actually filming with it right here, so if it goes out of focus or there's any issues, you know who to blame. You blame Canada. You always blame Canada.
F you, buddy.
So what did I shoot with this camera? Well, I took it out to the Renaissance Fair for some photos. I took it to Philadelphia Typewriter to get some of the typewritery people working in a lower light situation. Took it over to Pizzeria Bedia to get some portraits, and I also took it out to the park to photograph a kid running around and riding his little bike because it's a good camera that a parent or someone like that might purchase to chase around their little kids. Now, in terms of lenses, I used the new 35-1.4, the 50-1.4 from Nikon, as well as the 70-200 2.8 directly on the camera to try and use one of the best with honors lenses to see how the camera worked. Now, before we jump into the specs, let's start with the outside of the camera as well as the design. And I will say it's like a mini Z6 III, only in the way of the design and the button layouts. Nikon has done a good job of making sure that all of their cameras have very similar button designs so that you can be familiar with them from one camera to the next, to the next, to the next. Now, anybody who has a Z50 might recall that there were touch buttons on the screen and not actual buttons. There were buttons, but there weren't as many. And it was a pain in the tuchus to use those touch buttons on the screen. They've done away with that to give you more buttons. Now, this Z50 II is slightly thicker than the original Z50 and weighs in a little bit more. It weighs in at 1.15 pounds or 520 grams. Now, one of the new buttons you find on the top of this camera is becoming more popular with the Xenial and Alpha generation, you know, people that like to put presets on everything, because there is a picture control button on the top. When you hold it down, you can cycle through different picture styles, and you even have the ability to do custom recipes. Say we wanted to make a Skittles preset, we could upload that to Nikon Cloud and then have people download it, but you do have the ability to create your own recipes, share them with friends. Now remember, this is only for JPEGs. If you are shooting RAW, this won't matter. You will see it in the camera, but after the fact, you could always reset that in the camera later. It's very similar to what Fuji does with their film simulations, which you can access with a press of a button. Now, here's something different with the new Z50 versus the old one, and you can see that it has a flip out vari-angle rotatable screen. The old one just had the flip down style screen, which I personally prefer. But for the type of clientele that Nikon is going after for this, people want to have the selfie mode. Look at me, I'm so cool. But it also comes in handy if you're sitting here recording video like I'm doing right now, and I wanted to flip the screen to me to see what's going on. That would be useful. So this is a good upgrade that they've done. In terms of the EVF, you have the same 2.36 million dot EVF in this camera, and Nikon says that it is 2 times as bright as the old one at 1,000 nits. I don't know why Nikon is caring so much about the brightness of the screen. The screen looks fine, the EVF looks fine when you look through it. Keep in mind, it's a smaller camera, which means smaller EVF. But I didn't run into any issues. I don't wear glasses when I shoot, I take them off, I look through the camera, it looked perfectly fine to me. And what is even cooler is when you go vertical, it does rotate all of your information into a vertical display, unlike Sony. But it's a fine EVF, it gets the job done. You have a microphone jack and now a headphone jack, which you didn't have the headphone before. You've got a micro HDMI port, and you have USB-C charging on the side. So when you want to charge your battery, you just plug it into a USB-C and you can charge it up. As you can see from the filming of the back of the camera, we're basically plugging every hole in this camera other than the HDMI. You have the same smaller battery as before, but with a little bit more capacity this time, the ENEL25A. I highly suggest you either get extra batteries or you carry around a portable charger for your phone and you can plug it in and give it some extra juice when you need it because it's smaller, which means you won't get as much power. So now that we got rid of the outside of the body, let's start talking about the specs. You have the same 20.9 megapixel APS-C sensor as the Z50. Now there might be subtle tweaks when it comes to phase detect autofocus that's on the sensor. They might change that up. But what's interesting here is when we did the video on the Z50, Nikon said that it was a very similar sensor to that of the D500. Now that came out 9 years ago. Are we still using basically 9 years ago tech in terms of the sensor in this camera? I think the answer to that is probably yes. There might be subtle tweaks, but the overall architecture seems to be about the same. Now, in terms of native ISO, Nikon says the ISO gets tweaked, but that is generally because of the new processors that they put inside of the cameras. They can process the data a little different. You can do native ISO from 100 up to 51,200. Remember, crop sensor, smaller sensor, higher ISO equals more Swiss cheese. From what I saw with the images look very good, but as you get into higher ISO situations, you will start to see a slight muddying of those files, especially in really low light situations. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you this photo taken with the Nikon Z50 II and edited with FroPak 4, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn, C41, Copper Tone, Kaleidoscope, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, and Wet Hot American Summer. These all look great, but check this out. Exclusive and all new to FroPak 4, we have 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets. There is Face Enhance, Full Body Enhance, Eyes Only Enhance, and Background Blur. One more thing I want to show you is my all-time favorite preset from FroPak 1 is Skittles. With one click, we go boom. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow, give yourself a great starting point, or you're just tired of other people's presets sucking, as you can see, ours don't suck. We created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/FroPak4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get the Grand Slam bundle that includes FroPak 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course Skittles, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. This is Nikon's first DX camera powered by the Expeed 7 processor. It now has 3D tracking as well as subject detection, and it detects 9 different subjects. You've got people, you've got birds, dogs, cats, cars, bikes, motorcycles, trains, airplanes. I should have said trains, planes, and automobiles.
Is this a good combo or what? No.
And there is a dedicated bird AF mode in this camera, similar to the Z9, but not found in the Z6 III. So sorry, Z6 III users, this camera has something that the others don't. Now, I was able to record my electronic viewfinder during the shoots that I was on to show you how the autofocus worked. So we're gonna show you a montage here of the autofocus in action in the different situations that I photographed so you can see how the focusing points moved around and worked in those environments. So do I see an improvement from 5 years ago with the Z50 or also with the ZFC, which was the same as the Z50? And the answer to that is yes. It's better, and you can see that when it actually finds an eye. I mean, sometimes the box lags behind, but when I get the photos back in the computer, it's pretty accurate. But the area where I still see an issue is if it doesn't see a full face. If your profile view, what would happen is in the photo mode, you would see all those green boxes popping up in the typewriter store because it would see the side profile. As soon as someone turned, then it would see their eye, but if it didn't see their full face, it doesn't have good subject detection for that. And that's not the best thing to have. So the autofocus is good. Kid running around in the park, that worked perfectly fine. Renaissance Fair, it found what it needed to find, and I shot the things at 1.4 wide open, and it still did a pretty good job. So yeah, it's better, but is it the best of the best with honor, sir, compared to something that Canon equivalent or Sony equivalent has? And the answer to that is no. Canon's autofocus is superior, and Sony's autofocus is superior in competing products in the same price point. Let me jump in here and say, would you like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations? If you said yes, just look for this orange box over on fronosphoto.com, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm gonna send you that guide for free. Now, once again, I want to remind you that we are filming with the Z50 II right here in full AFF, which is the autofocus following mode. So it's finding me, I hope I'm not out of focus, because that wouldn't be good. So more onto the camera, there is still no joystick. Was that a deal breaker? No, but it would be nice to have a joystick to move around in case I want to tell the focus where to go. Now, you could do 11 frames per second, which is up from 5.5 or 6 that the Z50 offered. 11 is fast. 11 is pretty fast. Now, you do have electronic mode. You can switch into C15 and C30, but when you switch into C15 and C30, you go into normal JPEG mode, which is like medium, I guess, if we were to say small, medium, and large, because when you're shooting in 11 frames per second, you can shoot RAW and you can shoot JPEG Fine, which is the best quality JPEG that you're going to get. But C15 and C30, it locks you down into that normal, and you do not get the ability to shoot RAW. Now, this camera lets you do pre-capture. Remember, you've got to shoot only in JPEG, and it's going to be JPEG normal, but you could do all the way up to 1 full second. You could do 0.3, you could do a half a second, you could do it all the way up to a second of pre-capture, and they even offer you something for post-capture, but that's not something that I would personally turn on. Now, in terms of jelloing, you are going to see a bunch of jelloing if you're using the electronic shutter and you're moving fast or shooting balls flying. You could just see that things are going to bow. Remember, this is an old sensor. This isn't the newest sensor. It's not a stack sensor. It's not what you find in a Z6 III. So you might run into that jelloing effect when you are using the electronic shutter and things are moving fast. With the SD card slot, they've upgraded from a UHS 1 to a UHS 2 card slot. It is on the bottom where they put the battery, so if you're on a tripod and you need to get to the card slot, you kind of have to like take it off the tripod in order to open the door to take it out. It's kind of pain in the butt that it's down there, but really you're not changing cards super fast and you're not really gonna be on a tripod too often. And Nikon also has Nikon Imaging Cloud connectivity. That is, we're not even sure how you connect to it. It's not the easiest thing to connect to. Maybe Nikon will make it easier one day, but right now it's not the easiest thing to figure out. In terms of video specs, we're using the camera for video right now. We're shooting in N-Log in 24p. Now, what you do get, you can do full width 4K up to 30 frames per second, which is oversampled from 5.6K in 10-bit 422H.265, or 4K at 60 frames per second with a DX crop mode. Remember, this camera is already a DX camera, so you are cropping inside of a crop when you want to do the 4K 60. But the Z50 did not offer 60 frames per second, so that is one of the upgrades that you get here. You have full HD up to 120 frames per second, and like I already said, it does support N-Log. New on this camera is a 10 light, so I can see that it is recording. We have a solid tally light on. That's great when you're shooting video. You got waveforms, you have high-res zoom, and unlimited record time, unlike the original Z50. For those people who like to do product reviews, you do have a product review mode, which is very similar to the showcase mode that Sony offers, where you hold something in front of the camera like this, and it focuses on it, and then you hold something, and then you move it, and it should focus back on me. That's how product showcase modes work. One of the biggest disappointments in this camera was a disappointment in the Z50 as well. There's no IBIS. So when I was shooting, I didn't have IBIS, and I was using the 35-1.4 and the 50-1.4. Those lenses don't have VR either. It is kind of odd to have cameras that don't have IBIS at this point, which doesn't make much sense other than they are trying to save money. It also doesn't have a digital hot shoe, which everything has a digital hot shoe these days, but again, I rather see IBIS than a digital hot shoe. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for my personal photo website at jaredpolin.com for over 10 years because it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know any coding. In fact, I'm able to put up a store to sell prints, and you could do the same thing as well in a matter of minutes. So if you want to get your 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FronosPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FronosPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to the video. So what does this bad boy cost? $900. Now that's for the body only, which is $50 more than the Z50. Is it expensive? I mean, it sounds a little expensive for it to not have IBIS and things like that. And in comparison to the other cameras on the Canon and Sony front, it's very similar. It's in a good point. I like the camera. The quality of Nikon's files is still fantastic. The autofocus has gotten better, but a lot of people are gonna go, where's the flagship? Where's the D50 flagship? Well, can Nikon even do that? They gotta focus on what they need to focus on. I don't really care about a flagship pro-end camera on a DX crop side, and I know a lot of people are like, but I like shooting birds and I want that extra boom, boom. I want that extra boom, but I'd rather go full frame. And I know it's more expensive, but wouldn't you rather spend a couple $100 more and get a Z6 III, which is a fantastic camera, than a crop sensor D500 style camera like this? That's my take on that. This at $900, it's pretty good. It still feels good in the hands. It's a powerful camera. They made some nice upgrades. They made some questionable choices by not putting IBIS in there, but it shoots very well. The main thing here is that we are using a much older sensor. I think a lot of Nikon fans wanted to see an updated sensor in this camera, which would have been a better choice. But hey, if Nikon thinks that it works and that's what they're doing, then this is what you're getting for the next little while. It's an old sensor, but it still does a pretty good job. So that's what I have to say about that, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FronosPhoto.com. See ya.